Octavia stopped me during the wedding practice and said something that hurt me very badly. She said, "Honestly, you don't fit how we want things to look tomorrow. You should not come." Her voice was cold and mean. I felt like everyone around us was watching me. There were so many people there, and it felt like all their eyes were on me as I walked away. My face felt hot, and my chest felt tight. I did not walk to my car like I planned. Instead, I took out my phone. My hands were shaking, but my mind felt very clear. I called the food company and said, "Cancel everything right now." The person on the phone sounded surprised, but they listened. When the call ended, I stood there quietly. My name is Astra Niven. I am 32 years old. I live in Portland, and I run a successful accounting business. That means I help people manage money. I am not famous, and I am not fancy. I do not wear expensive clothes or act glamorous. But I had something very powerful. I had full control over the money for their dream wedding. When I was a child, my younger brother Bastian was always treated differently. He was my favorite. Everyone worried about him. Everyone helped him. I was the older sister, and I was the reliable one. I cleaned up the mess. I fixed my problems. I helped when things went wrong. People always said I was strong and didn't need much. When Bastian got engaged to Octavia 6 months ago, I wanted to do something kind. I wanted to show love. I wanted to feel included. So I offered to pay for their entire wedding as my gift. I paid for the wedding place, the food, the flowers, the music, the pictures, and everything else. For 6 months, I worked very hard. I paid deposits on time. I talked to all the workers. I planned the details. I solved problems. I answered calls and emails. While Bastian and Octavia dreamed about how beautiful everything would be, I made it real. I handled the hard parts. My parents always said I was the steady one. They said I didn't need attention. They said Bastian needed more help than me. I believed them. I thought that paying for his wedding would finally make me feel like part of the family, not just the helper in the background. But Octavia never liked me. From the start, she acted cold. She looked at me like I was in her way. She thought I was too simple and not stylish enough for her perfect wedding picture. I tried to be polite. I tried to stay quiet. I tried to help. When Octavia told me I did not belong at the wedding I paid for, something inside me broke. I realized I had been paying to be pushed away. I was giving my money to people who wanted me gone. The worst part happened during the wedding practice at the place I had chosen and paid for. It was a Friday evening. I arrived early to check the final details. I carried my big wedding folder with papers inside. I wore a simple blue dress. I didn't want attention. I just wanted things to go well. The garden by the river was beautiful. I had visited 12 different places before choosing this one. Trees stood tall, and small lights hung between their branches. The wedding area glowed as the sun went down. It looked magical, just like I imagined. Octavia walked toward me wearing expensive clothes. Everything she wore looked perfect and costly. 5 bridesmaids followed her. They all looked the same. They were tall, blonde, and very stylish. They looked like they came from a magazine. Octavia looked at me and said sharply, "What are you doing here?" I blinked, confused. I said, "I'm here for practice. I wanted to make sure everything was ready." She crossed her arms and said coldly, "You're not part of the wedding. And honestly, you don't fit the look we want." Her bridesmaids giggled quietly. They whispered to each other and smiled like I was a joke. My cheeks felt hot, and my throat felt tight. I said softly, "I'm Bastian's sister." I thought I would walk down the aisle as family. Octavia stepped closer. Her smile looked fake. She leaned in and whispered so only I could hear, "I think it's better if you don't come tomorrow. This day is about us." I looked around, hoping to see Bastian. I hoped he would come over and defend me. But he was far away, laughing with his friends. He did not look at me. He pretended not to see me. Octavia smiled in a cruel way and said, "You don't belong here. Leave." Those words hurt me deeply. I was being told to leave a wedding that I paid for. Every chair, every flower, every light was paid for with my money. I turned and walked away slowly. Outside, I stood in the parking lot. The air felt cold. My hands shook as I held my car keys. Everything inside that place was chosen by me. I tasted the food. I picked the music. I chose the flowers. And now I was told I didn't belong. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Bastian. He wrote, "Octavia told me what happened. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." That was the moment I understood. This was not just Octavia being mean. This was planned. They wanted me gone but wanted my money to stay. The next morning, I called the wedding place to check the final details. I wanted to make sure everything was still okay. That's when the worker told me something shocking. She said, Octavia called earlier this week. She wanted to change the main contact name. I asked, did she say why? The worker said Octavia told them there was family trouble and that she needed to protect the wedding. Octavia made it seem like I was the problem. I felt sick. I hung up and drove to my parents' house. I needed support. I needed someone to care. I told my mother everything. She barely looked at me. She said, Octavia is under a lot of stress. Just be a bigger person. My father nodded and said, you've always been strong. Bastian needs this more than you. They told me to skip the wedding so everyone could be happy. I said, I paid for everything. My mother replied, that was very generous, but don't cause trouble. They made me feel like I was wrong. Like wanting respect was selfish. Like disappearing quietly was the right thing. Later that day, Octavia called me. Her voice sounded sweet, but it was fake. She said, I know yesterday was awkward, but this is just how it has to be. I stayed quiet. She continued, Bastian and I are so thankful for everything you paid for. You're such a generous sister. She thanked me for my money while telling me not to come. Then she said, we'll take lots of pictures. Maybe next week I'll show you how beautiful it all was. She wanted me to pay and then look at pictures like I wasn't family. I finally spoke. I said, you're right. She sounded happy and said, I knew you'd understand. I replied calmly, I understand perfectly. After the call ended, I sat in my home office. I looked at the wall covered in contracts and papers. Then I realized something very important. Every single contract was in my name. Octavia's name was not on them. I did that on purpose. I wanted things to be clear and safe. I also made sure every contract had rules that allowed me to cancel with short notice. I learned that from running my business. I always protect myself. I also saved messages. I wrote notes. I kept proof of how Octavia treated me. They thought they could erase me and still keep my money. They were wrong. My business instincts kicked in when I first sensed trouble. I always keep records. I always write things down and keep copies of everything. I keep receipts, contracts, emails, and messages. I do this because I learned that people sometimes change their minds or try to lie later. The wedding insurance policy was also in my name. This insurance was supposed to protect me from losing money. I had paid for it. I had kept it safe. So if anything went wrong, I could use it. Most importantly, Bastian had never been added as a co-signer on any of the contracts. That means his name was not on the papers. His name was not on the agreements. Only my name was on them. When we planned the wedding, I had handled all the details. I had done everything to help. They had assumed my generosity meant giving up control. They thought I would always say yes. They thought I would always do whatever they wanted. They thought I would always pay for everything. They thought I would never complain. But I had maintained legal authority over everything. I had kept control. I had not given it away. I was the one who signed the papers. I was the one who had the right to cancel things. I was the one who could say yes or no. Every flower petal belonged to me. Every dinner plate belonged to me. Every note of music belonged to me. All of the wedding details were under my name. That meant I was in charge of the contracts. My ally was my business partner and best friend, Jasper. He had watched this drama unfold for months. He had seen everything happen. He knew how Octavia was acting. He knew how Bastian was not standing up for me. He knew how I was being treated. When I called him that night, his response was immediate. He answered the phone quickly, like he was waiting for my call. They're using you, he said bluntly. He didn't try to be polite. He didn't try to soften it. He said it like it was obvious. You're not their sister, he added. You're their ATM. An ATM is a machine that gives out money. That is what they were treating me like. They were treating me like a machine that only exists to give money. They were not treating me like a person. They were not treating me like family. Jasper came over within an hour. He brought takeout and his laptop. We sat down at my dining room table and spread all the contracts across the table. The contracts were thick. There were many pages. They had lots of words. But Jasper was good at reading them. We reviewed every clause and cancellation policy. We read everything carefully. We looked at every rule. We wanted to know what we could do. We wanted to know what was possible. You have complete legal authority to cancel everything, he confirmed after reading through the documents. He sounded calm, but I could hear that he was serious. These contracts are bulletproof. Bulletproof means they are very strong. It means they cannot be broken easily. It means they protect you. It means the other people cannot use tricks to get around them. But should I? I asked, still hesitating. I was not sure. I was scared. I didn't want to cause a big fight. I didn't want to ruin Bastian's wedding. I didn't want to make people hate me. I didn't want to be the bad guy. It's Bastian's wedding, I said. I tried to explain myself. I tried to say that I wanted to be kind. Jasper looked at me like I had grown a second head. He looked shocked. He could not believe I was even asking. They can't have their cake and eat it too, he said. He meant they cannot take my money and then treat me badly. They cannot ask for my help and then ignore me. He was angry for me. If you're not family enough to attend, he said, you're not family enough to pay. Those words hit me hard. They were true. If they didn't want me there, why should I pay for everything? Meanwhile, my phone buzzed constantly. It never stopped. It was like a little alarm that kept ringing. Bastian called repeatedly, but I let it go to voicemail. I didn't answer. I did not want to talk to him yet. I needed time to think. I needed to be calm. His messages grew increasingly desperate. His voice sounded worried. He sounded scared. Astra, please call me, he said in one message. We need to talk about tomorrow. I know you're upset, he said in another message. But we can work this out. Please don't do anything crazy. He sounded like he was begging. He sounded like he was trying to save the wedding. He sounded like he didn't want to lose everything. Octavia left voicemails too. Her tone shifted from condescending to panicked. First she sounded like she was trying to act nice. Then she sounded like she was scared. There seems to be some confusion about the wedding arrangements, she said. Please call me immediately. Astra, I think there's been a misunderstanding, she said in another message. We really need to talk. My parents also tried to intervene, but I blocked their calls temporarily. I could not handle more guilt trips. I could not handle them telling me I should be the bigger person. I could not handle them telling me to forgive and forget. Jasper encouraged me to hold firm for once in my life. He said, don't be the one who fixes everyone else's mess. He was right. I always fixed problems. I always helped. I always made things better for everyone else. But this time, I needed to protect myself. By Friday evening, the vendors started calling. The vendors were the people who were going to provide things for the wedding. The florist, the caterer, the music people, the venue. They all started calling. Apparently, Octavia was frantically trying to take control of arrangements that weren't legally hers. She was acting like she owned everything. But she did not. The contracts were not in her name. The bride says she's in charge now, the florist said, confused. But all our contracts are with you. The caterer called next. Should we be taking directions from Octavia or from you? They asked. I stayed professional but firm. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I stayed calm. All decisions go through me, I said. I'm the contract holder. The chaos was building, and I could feel their panic through the phone calls. They were scrambling to figure out what had happened. They didn't know who to listen to. They didn't know who was in charge. The final breaking point came when Bastian showed up at my office the night before the wedding. His usually perfect hair was messy. His eyes were red with stress. He looked like he had not slept. He looked like he had been crying. You're really going to destroy my wedding over this? He asked, finally showing some emotion. I looked at him calmly. I did not yell. I did not scream. I'm not destroying anything, I replied calmly. I'm just choosing not to fund my own exclusion. He looked confused. He did not understand. He did not want to believe it. That's not what happened, he said. I pulled out my phone and showed him Octavia's texts from earlier. I showed him the messages where she said I didn't belong. Your fiancé told me I don't belong at your wedding, I said. In writing. On the phone. Clear as day. Bastian's face crumbled as he read her words. His face fell. He looked shocked. He looked hurt. For the first time, he seemed to understand what had really happened. But it was too late. The confrontation happened Saturday morning when my entire family showed up at my apartment. They came like a team. They stood in my hallway like an intervention group. They were demanding I fix this immediately. Bastian, Octavia, and my parents stood there together. They looked angry. They looked desperate. They looked like they wanted me to say yes. The vendors are refusing to work, they said. Octavia screamed, her perfect makeup already smudged from crying. She looked like a mess. She looked like she was losing control. They say everything is cancelled, she shouted. That's correct, I said calmly, sipping my coffee. My voice was steady. I was not shaking. I cancelled all contracts at 6 a.m. this morning, I said. My father erupted. He was furious. He could not believe I had done this. You're being petty and vindictive, he said. This is Bastian's wedding day. It was Bastian's wedding day, I corrected. Now it's just Saturday. Octavia broke down completely. She began to cry harder. You can't do this, she said. We have 150 guests coming. You told me I don't belong there. I said, my voice steady as steel. So I'm not paying to not belong there. Bastian finally found his voice. Astra, I never said you couldn't come, he said. You never said I could either. When your fiancé told me to leave, you said nothing. I pulled out my phone and showed them the text trail. I showed them the messages where he told me not to make it harder than it needed to be. You literally told me not to make it harder than it needs to be, I said. That's not what I meant, Bastian protested. But the evidence was clear. The messages were there. The words were there. He could not deny it. Octavia tried a different approach, her voice desperate. We can fix this, she said. You can come to the wedding now. I can come. I laughed after you made it clear I don't fit your vibe. My mother pleaded with tears in her eyes. Think about all the guests, she said. All the planning. People are flying in from across the country. You should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't family enough to attend. But you're Bastian's sister, my father argued. Exactly, I said. I'm his sister, and you all forgot that when it mattered. Octavia collapsed into my armchair. She looked defeated. She looked like she had no idea what to do. We'll have nothing, she said. No venue, no food, no flowers, nothing. You'll have exactly what you wanted, I said. A wedding without me. Bastian stared at me in shock. He looked like he could not believe it. I can't believe you'd do this to us, he said. I didn't do anything to you, I replied. I stopped doing everything for you. There's a difference, I added. The room fell silent except for Octavia's sobbing. They finally understood that their actions had consequences. Bastian and Octavia had to make humiliating phone calls to cancel the wedding and notify 150 guests. They had to tell everyone that the wedding was canceled. They had to explain why. They had to admit they had messed up. They rescheduled for 3 months later and paid for a much smaller ceremony at a local restaurant with their own money. They did not have the big wedding they wanted. They had to start over. My parents tried to stay neutral, but they eventually apologized for choosing sides against me. They realized they had made a mistake. It took them weeks to understand. They had prioritized keeping peace over protecting their daughter. Octavia never apologized, but she never excluded me from family events again. She learned that treating me badly had real consequences. She learned that if you hurt someone, you might lose them. Bastian learned to speak up for himself instead of letting others fight his battles. He learned to stand up for me. He learned to tell the truth. Our relationship took time to heal, but it became stronger because it was built on mutual respect. We started talking again. We started spending time together. We learned to trust each other again. I used the money I saved to take a 2-week vacation to Italy, solo and peaceful. I went alone. I needed time to rest. I needed time to heal. I needed time to feel calm. The vendor cancellations were handled smoothly, and I got most of my deposits back thanks to those cancellation clauses. The contracts were strong. The rules protected me. I got my money back. When Bastian finally got married 3 months later, it was a simple ceremony where I was treated as an honored guest. Everyone was kind to me. Everyone made me feel welcome. The celebration was smaller but more genuine. It was not fancy. It was not big. But it was real. It was honest. It was filled with love and respect. I realized that love without respect is just manipulation. I realized that family boundaries matter more than keeping the peace. If someone hurts you, it is not your job to always forgive them right away. For once, I didn't fix everyone else's problems. I fixed my own.